April 20th, 2010. The well was supposed to be sealed. Then a column of oil, gas, and mud erupted beneath the Deepwater horizon, killing 11 crew members and setting the Gulf of Mexico on fire. They called it an accident, but every safety barrier failed not by chance, but by choice. The true story of this blowout is not just a disaster, it is how a skip test and a corporate decision made catastrophe inevitable. So what could have stopped the chain reaction before everything exploded? Halliburton's cement job was supposed to lock the Macondo well shut, forming a solid barrier between the oil reservoir and the mile of water above. In the weeks before the blowout, Halliburton's own lab in Houston ran 3 tests on the cement mix scheduled for Deepwater Horizon. Each time, the results pointed to instability. The nitrogen foam design meant to lighten the cement for deepwater use refused to set properly under pressure. The slurries separated in test cells, leaving channels where gas could escape. Internal emails and lab records documented these failures, but the results never reached the crew on the rig. The cement was pumped anyway. Standard procedure called for a cement bond log, a downhole scan to verify the seal. Running this test would have cost about $128,000 and taken half a day. But with the rig burning through $500,000 every 24 hours, BP managers chose to skip it. The decision saved time on a well already weeks behind schedule. Without the bond log, no one could confirm if the cement had actually isolated the reservoir. When the cement set, it left behind invisible flaws. Gas from the reservoir found its way up through microscopic cracks and channels, moving past the casing and toward the surface. The first barrier had failed before anyone on Deepwater Horizon realized the well was vulnerable. The disaster's chain reaction started not with a dramatic explosion, but with a quiet decision in a boardroom and a series of warnings ignored in a laboratory. Late on April 20th, the crew gathered on the rig floor for a final check before sealing the Macondo well. The negative pressure test was meant to confirm that the barriers would hold against the force of the reservoir below. Instead, the pressure gauge on the drill pipe read nearly 1,400 pounds per square inch. Fluid bled from the pipe when it should have stayed still. For more than an hour, BP's well site leaders and Transocean's tool pusher argued over the numbers. The readings did not make sense. Some crew members raised concerns, pointing out that the well was pushing back, a textbook sign of a failed cement job. But the debate did not end with a shutdown. Instead, BP's lead on the rig offered a new explanation: the bladder effect, a theory that suggested the pressure was trapped by a float valve, not by a leak. There was no precedent for this in offshore drilling, but it gave cover to move forward. The Houston office, reached by phone, agreed with the call. The test was declared a pass. Crew testimony later described growing discomfort, but their doubts were overruled. The official logs for April 20th show the test as successful, even as the well quietly leaked gas up the casing. This was the last clear warning. The final barrier had already failed, and no one on the rig was willing or allowed to stop the job. By April 2010, the Macondo well was 43 days behind schedule. Costs had soared to $58 million over the original budget. Every extra day on site meant another $500,000 spent just to keep the rig running. Emails from BP's finance team in Houston tracked the overruns in real time, urging the operations group to cut delays wherever possible. Daily drilling reports flagged the mounting expenses, and managers began weighing every safety check against the ticking meter of rig time. Non-critical steps, like the cement bond log, were labeled expendable. The pressure to finish grew with each lost day, and the choices made on shore filtered down to the rig floor. When engineers raised concerns about casing design or the number of centralizers, the answer came back fast: stay on target and avoid new delays. The project's timeline had become a spreadsheet of hours and dollars, with safety margins squeezed at every turn. In the end, The well's completion date mattered more than the questions left unanswered. The cost of catching up was measured not just in money, but in every shortcut taken to save a day. On April 15, 2010, Halliburton engineer Marvin Volek emailed BP's team with a warning. The well needed 21 centralizers to keep the casing centered and prevent gas from channeling through the cement. Only 6 were on hand. The reply from BP's operations manager was blunt. "Who cares? It's done. End of story. We'll probably be fine, and we'll get a good cement job." The decision to skip the extra centralizers saved a shipment and several days of rig time. Halliburton's objections landed in inboxes but never changed the plan. The cement was pumped off center, leaving gaps that let gas escape. Contractors raised other concerns about the casing design and about skipped checks, but each time they were told to keep moving. BP's on-site manager enforced the pace set by Houston. On April 20, 2010, as the rig's schedule slipped further, BP executives arrived on Deepwater Horizon for a safety award ceremony. The mood on the rig was tense. Crew members knew about the shortcuts, but the pressure to finish drowned out objections. Every warning was filed away under acceptable risk. The well's defenses depended on equipment and procedures that now had no margin for error. The blowout preventer on Deepwater Horizon was built to be the final safeguard, a 300-ton stack of hydraulic rams and control pods standing guard on the sea floor. In the months before the disaster, maintenance logs documented a steady loss of hydraulic fluid from the system. A leak in the control lines bled off the pressure needed to drive the rams with full force. When technicians checked the blue control pod, they found a dead battery. Voltage had dropped below the threshold needed to trigger the emergency functions. No one replaced it. The blind shear ram, designed to slice through steel and seal the well in an emergency, was never tested under real-world blowout conditions. Cameron's design met the industry standard. It could cut a centered, stationary pipe in a controlled shop test. On April 20th, the drill pipe inside the well had already buckled under the force of surging oil and gas. When the command came to close the rams, the pipe was pushed several inches off center, wedged against the side of the bore. The blades closed, but could not cut through the distorted metal. Forensic analysis by investigators later revealed the rams had only partially closed, leaving the well wide open to the reservoir below. The device that was supposed to be the last defense had never faced the scenario it was built to stop. BP's final bill for the Deepwater Horizon disaster reached $65 billion, a sum that covers cleanup, compensation, criminal penalties, and civil fines. The company pleaded guilty to 11 counts of felony manslaughter, 1 for each worker lost in the explosion. In 2012, BP agreed to a $4.5 billion criminal settlement, the largest in United States history at the time. 4 years later, the company settled civil claims for environmental damage for $20.8 billion, most of it earmarked for Gulf restoration under the Restore Act. Transocean, the rig's owner, paid $1.4 billion in fines and settlements. Halliburton, responsible for the failed cement job, paid $1.1 billion after admitting that its engineers destroyed computer simulations of the cement failure once the well was lost. The legal math never added up to personal accountability. 2 BP supervisors faced manslaughter charges in federal court. Both were acquitted. 1 BP executive was convicted of obstruction of Congress for deleting text messages about the disaster, but he received probation and served no prison time. No senior executive at BP, Transocean, or Halliburton went to jail. The United States Justice Department's plea agreements and settlement tables read like a ledger: billions for wildlife, billions for fisheries, billions for lost livelihoods. 11 deaths, 4.9 million barrels of oil, and the worst marine spill on record were paid out, written off, and absorbed as a cost of doing business. Today, offshore rigs in the Gulf drill even deeper than Macondo, run by the same companies, under immense commercial pressure. The systems meant to prevent disaster are only as strong and as enforceable as those who enforce them. In deep water, shortcuts still cost less than lives. The oil keeps flowing.